stands among the most compelling examples of what ufologists call a daylight disk. The photographs were taken on July 29, 1952 by George Stock outside of his lawnmower shop in Passaic, New Jersey. Stock reported that as he was working outside at 4:30 p.m., he looked up to see something unusual flying overhead. Using an inexpensive box reflex camera, he snapped pictures of what he described as a disc-shaped object with a metallic bottom. It hovered momentarily, then accelerated and flew away. We may never know if Stock saw a real flying saucer, created a hoax, or was himself fooled by someone else's hoax.
Having looked at photos for 20 years, I would say that probably the bulk of what I have been given are honest mistakes by people.
Dr. Bruce Maccabee is an optical physicist employed by the United States Navy. His official research involves high-energy space lasers, but his interest also lies in the detailed analysis of UFO photographs.
I recently received a photograph from a lady who says she took a photograph of a sunset at night, and to her great surprise, after it's developed, very thin oval-type bright images appear. They're in a straight line. This looks very suspicious to me because this is exactly the thing that would happen if somebody were to take a photograph through a window and have lights in the ceiling which were in a line, and you would get some sort of a reflection.
Still, other UFO photographs represent a deliberate attempt at a hoax. The photographer of these saucers over England admitted to pasting disc-shaped paper cutouts on his window before shooting the picture. Of particular interest to Dr. Maccabee are photos which defy explanation and show no evidence of a hoax or misidentification. One such case began at a farm in rural Oregon in 1950.
These are two photos taken by a farmer and his wife in 1950 in McMinnville, Oregon. Here's the first photo and here's the second, and we'll get a little bit of a blow-up on these.
Using image enhancement equipment, Maccabee brings into focus the startling photographs that were taken in the early evening with a simple camera.
See that it's an oval object with a little thing on the top, like a little protrusion at the top of it. This is obviously a hoax or the real thing. There's no halfway point. You can see the image clearly enough to see that it's not a bird or plane or Superman. So the next question is, what could it be? And if we go back over here, we can see that there are electrical wires right up above the object. Looking again at the blow-up. And now the question is there any evidence of a suspension underneath the wires?
A contrast-enhanced version of the Oregon photo reveals minute scratches that Maccabee must distinguish from a string or line that might have been attached to the object to suspend it for a hoax.
No one has found any evidence of a line going up above the object. There is a possibility that this thing might have been thrown and photographed, except that the image is not blurred by motion.
What the analysis provides, however, is proof only that something was photographed in the sky. There is no evidence here that points to extraterrestrial spacecraft unless that is what you believe. Maccabee also demonstrates how blurring can be used to create the impression of a UFO, where there was only an out-of-focus cookpot suspended by a wire. Other flying saucer images are also in focus, but simply look too good to be true. Such is the case of the astounding photographs taken by a farmer named Billy Meyer.
Billy Meyer is a Swiss man who has taken lots of photographs and lots of movie footage, all of which I think are faked. He's the only one that manages to photograph the ships. He's the only one that sees the stuff or channels the stuff.
Billy Meyer claims to be contacted telepathically by space travelers from the constellation of the Pleiades. He is instructed to set up his camera in time to photograph craft that Meyer calls the beam ships.
And these photographs are taken over a beautiful Swiss valley. They seem to show these objects coming in under conditions of broad daylight. But photo analysis shows, not surprisingly, that these are small objects not very far from the camera, apparently hung from a fishing pole line.
His movies are even more startling because if they are authentic, they would represent clear and distinct proof that flying saucers are real and validate the UFO belief system. Not surprisingly, they have come under the scrutiny of Dr. Maccabee.
One particular section that I was interested in when I saw it, I said, looks to me like a pendulum motion of this object. This is a scene showing a house in the background and a big tree, and the object's swinging back and forth, and then near the end it seems to actually contact this big tree, and everybody's saying, wow, it's on top of a big tall tree, how can this possibly be a hoax?
Maccabee noted that although Meyer's camera remains stationary, his beam chip never leaves the view of his lens. This supports Maccabee's conclusion that this film was taken of a relatively small light object suspended by a string and swinging like a pendulum around a small model tree.
The bottom line for me is that I can't say that Meyer has not had any experiences. He may well have. But I'm not using any of his video or photos or whatever as what I would consider scientific evidence that there really are aliens flying around out there.
Still, other photographic evidence, such as this image, taken by a geological survey team off the coast of Brazil in 1958, point away from hoax and toward the sighting of a real flying saucer.
A Brazilian naval photographer on a ship was there with the rest of the men when they saw an object shaped like Saturn, in other words, an object with a ring around it, flying toward an island that they were near, Trinidad Island, flying around the island and then taking off in the distance. And he snapped 4 or 5 or so or more photos of the object with literally dozens and dozens of witnesses.
The sighting lasted nearly 2 minutes. First, the object was reported to approach the island. Then, it disappeared behind a mountain. It then reappeared before moving off at high speed toward the sea.
Now these pictures show something. It's not an ambiguous object that could be anything. This is clearly a structure that somebody built. It doesn't look like anything that we have on Earth. There were all these witnesses who saw the picture being taken. For these reasons, the photographs are unusually evidential and have to figure in any kind of case for the reality of UFOs as somebody's technology.
Because this is a multiple witness case done by scientists and a professional photographer, and it has many photographs, it probably has to be taken seriously as the #1 photographic case in UFO history.